Isaiah 11:2 says, "He shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth." When the outcasts of Israel are assembled, and the dispersed of Judah have been gathered, we will bring you that story. The Lamb Network, in the meantime, will gather news from these same four corners and bring them to you, all with a Messianic perspective, and all from Messianic believers. Shalom, and welcome to Lamb Network's Four Corners weekly news broadcast. I'm Rabbi Darryl Weinberg. Thank you for joining us. This episode will cover events that took place around this planet through May 2nd, 2019. Here are those stories. We have several reports on the U.S. news front, and let's start with an article John Craig is calling "Searches of Phones and Laptops at Airports Are on the Rise." Here is John Craig.
All right. Well, thanks, Darryl. Yes, here's the article. U.S. searches of phone laptops at airports rising, suit says. This is from Philly.com. And this is something rather interesting. Not that I travel as much as I used to, but in spite of that, there are some circumstances that you need to know if you are traveling in and out of the country. Get this. U.S. government searches of travelers' cell phones and laptops at airports and border crossings nearly quadrupled since 2015, and done for reasons beyond customs and immigration enforcement, according to papers filed Tuesday in a federal lawsuit that claims scouring electronic devices without a warrant is unconstitutional. Well, look, this is what's going on. The government has vigorously defended the searches, which rose to 33,295 in fiscal year 2018, as a critical tool to protect America. But the newly filed documents claim the scope of the warrantless searches has expanded to assist in enforcement of tax, bankruptcy, environmental, and consumer protection laws, gather intelligence, and advance criminal investigations. Agents with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection and U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement consider requests from other government agencies in determining whether to search travelers' electronic devices, the court paper said. They added the agents are searching the electronic devices of not only targeted individuals, but their associates, friends, and relatives. So, how big is the circle of influence, and who knows what any of the circle of influence that we have may be engaged in something of being a person of interest. Well, let's go on here. It says the new information about searches was included in a motion the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the American Civil Liberties Union, filed Tuesday in U.S. District Court in Massachusetts. It says the evidence we have presented, the court shows that the scope of ICE and CBP border searches is unconstitutionally broad, said Adam Schwartz, a senior staff attorney for the EFF based in San Francisco. This is what else they're doing. Their policies and practices allow unfettered warrantless searches of travelers' digital devices and empower officers to dodge the Fourth Amendment when rifling through highly personal information contained on laptops and phones, he said. And when the suit was filed against the government in 2017, DHS officials said U.S. citizens and everyone else are subject to examination and search by custom officials unless exempted by diplomatic status. Wow. The department has contended that no court has concluded that border searches of electronic devices require a warrant. Searches, some random, shall I say that again? Searches, some random, have uncovered evidence of human trafficking, terrorism, child pornography, visa fraud, export control breaches, and intellectual property rights violations, according to the department. Well, on the outset, that seems to be okay, but that's why we have a constitution that protects warrantless searches. Let's go on. The original case was filed on behalf of 10 American citizens and a lawful permanent resident from 7 states, including 2 journalists, a NASA engineer, and a former Air Force captain who alleged the searches violated their constitutional rights. They asked the court to rule that the government must have a warrant based on probable cause before searching electronic devices at U.S. ports of entry. I mean, after all, if you want to look at it in regards to the electronic age, our devices that we carry with us, when you click that on button, you begin to scroll through whatever information on there. Is like opening the front door of your home and allowing somebody to walk through every room, every closet, attic, basement, and even looking behind the cushions of the couch to find some type of information that could lead to what they might use as a criminal charge against you. You know, that's what the Constitution is supposed to do. The plaintiffs also are demanding the government expunge from investigatory databases information obtained in past searches. Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? ICE and CBP share information taken from travelers' electronic devices with other agencies, and there is control to prevent them from impermissibly retaining it, they argue. Well, based on this new information, they filed a motion Tuesday asking the judge to rule in their favor without a trial. Travelers' devices contain an extraordinary amount of highly personal information that the government can easily search, retain, and share, it argues. The new evidence reveals that the government agencies are using the pretext of the border to make an end run around the First and Fourth Amendments. And ACLU attorney Esha Bandari, the border is not a lawless place. They are not exempt from the Constitution, and the information on our electronic devices is not devoid of Fourth Amendment protections. We are asking the court to stop this unlawful practice, these unlawful searches, and require the government to get a warrant. Yep. So it wraps it up saying the plaintiffs also say that travelers have had their electronic devices searched at the border run increased odds of being subject to future device searches, as they can be flagged in government databases for additional scrutiny on that basis. Well, these are certainly disconcerting times that we're living in. It's also kind of that overreach of Big Brother wanting to know all of our personal business. And if for some reason they can't just jump online when we're online and get into our computers to see what's on it, you know, and when we're disconnected, they'll just stop us at the border and look at it that way. These are some things we need to be watching for. I'd be interested to see what the judge does in ruling on behalf of the plaintiffs and seeing if their constitutional rights will be protected without a trial. Well, that's it for this story. Some things to ponder as Big Brother continues to watch.
Thank you, John. Another story in U.S. news, Sherry Flannigan gives us a report about things we should already know. The days we're living in should be bringing an awareness of the different lifestyles all around us. But are we really paying attention? We should keep an eye on this lifestyle, as it is a direct conflict to our own lifestyle. New Age religion is on the rise again. Here's Sherry.
Thank you, Darryl. Witchcraft rising in the U.S. as Christianity declines. Recent decades have seen a dramatic rise in paganism and the number of Americans identifying as witches, while Christian denominations have been losing members, according to a new report. Quartz published a piece reviewing religion survey data from Connecticut's Trinity College covering 1990 to 2008, and from Pew Research Center covering 2014 to the present. They report that the United States Wiccan population skyrocketed from 8,000 in 1990 to 340,000 in 2008, a year that also found roughly 340,000 self-described pagans. The best source of data on the number of witches in the U.S. comes from assessments of the Wicca population. Quartz's Sing Kurtz and Dan Koff explain. Not all people who practice witchcraft consider themselves Wicca. but the religion makes up a significant subset. Pew currently puts the percentage of self-identified Wiccans or pagans at 0.3%, and those who self-identify as atheists, agnostic, or otherwise unaffiliated at 22.8%. Singh, Kurtz, and Koff suggest witchcraft's popularity is due to a combination of factors, from the long-time allure of witches in media and literature to contemporary rebranding of witchcraft of having more to do with nature and individuality than demons in the occult. In Quartz's report, Wicker noted, witchcraft is the perfect religion for liberal millennials who are already involved in yoga and meditation, mindfulness, and New Age spirituality, they write. With that foundation, they might show up for pagan holidays or new moon gatherings and begin to explore the more serious spiritual concepts at the root of these practices. The church needs to wake up to the reality of this realm and begin to approach it from a kingdom perspective, which understands its place and purpose. Wanda Algier of Intercessors of America and Winchester, Virginia's Crossroad Community Church argues, the sad thing is that these millennials who are exploring the dark side of the supernatural have more faith and belief than most Christians because they are open and spiritually hungry. The spiritual realm responds. The biggest hindrance to understanding the realities of the spirit realm is unbelief. Another element in the rise of witchcraft is its use by the anti-Trump movement. There is a movement of at least 13,000 people who promise to cast binding spells against President Trump, an effort that has been celebrated by the liberal media. The rituals this movement practices invoke the assistance of demons of the infernal realms and other spirits. Another report in the Christian Post states witches outnumber Presbyterians in the U.S., Wicca, paganism growing astronomically. Author Julie Roys, formerly of Moody Radio, in comments emailed to the Christian Post says, it makes sense that witchcraft in the occult world would rise as society becomes increasingly postmodern. The rejection of Christianity has left a void that people, as inherently spiritual beings, will seek to fill. Wicca has effectively repackaged witchcraft for millennial consumption. No longer is witchcraft and paganism satanic and demonic, she said. It's a pre-Christian tradition that promotes free thought and understanding of earth and nature. Yet such repackaging is deceptive, Royce adds, but one that a generation with little or no biblical understanding is prone to accept. I have to agree with Julie Royce's assessment. New Age, pagan worship, and the occult have been repackaged in order to deceive. Here are a few examples that I have found. Yoga is a big deception that millions of Americans participate in. We think it's just exercise. Actually, it has been proven that the exercises given to us by physical therapists is just as effective. The warming up exercises in yoga are a salute and worship of the sun. It's the practice of worship of an Eastern religion. Angel card readings are a replacement for tarot cards. They supposedly connect you with your guardian angel, spirit guides, and loved ones on the other side. You're connected to an angel, all right, but it's not a holy angel of Elohim. Reiki, an alternative medicine, uses the laying on of hands, mimicking the Bible, but it uses spirit guides invoked by name to confirm healing powers. Crystals, healing rocks, transcendental meditation, all of these come right out of the New Age basket. Mrs. Royce goes on to say in her email to the Christian Post, it's tragic and a reminder of how badly we need spiritual revival in this country. And also that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the powers of this dark world, she said, referencing Ephesians 6, which explains spiritual warfare. Back to you, Darryl.
We have another story concerning end times in a few minutes, but for now, let's keep the U.S. news flowing. We're finding that private payrolls surged by 275,000 last month. Well, Donald Trump is indeed MAGA, making America great again. And this is blowing past estimates in the biggest gain since July of last year. On the good news on the employment front, here's John Craig.
All right. Thank you, Rabbi. We've got some interesting news here in the U.S. as well. And so the reason why I say this, say about U.S. news, but if you're listening and you're in another country somewhere around the world, is that what affects America affects really, honestly, the rest of the world. And because so much is just based on the way the world works and the way it is right now. Well, let's real quickly. And the article here is private payroll surge by 275,000 in April, blowing past estimates and the biggest gain since July. So what is this talking about? Well, this is a report, and I'll have to say it actually came from CNBC News or CNBC.com. Not that I'm a big fan over there, but they got some interesting information. They're actually publishing some good information. And here the article is talking about the U.S. economy added far more jobs than expected in April as payrolls in the services sector grew by the most in more than 2 years, according to data released Wednesday by ADP and Moody's Analytics. This is why I say this, because everything that we see about the economy and about different things is always about an anti-Trump rhetoric. And the things that he's done, he's created a climate that has inspired job growth in the nation. Let's go on and look at a little bit more. Private payrolls grew by 275,000 last month, the biggest increase since July, when they expanded by 284,000. Economists polled by Dow Jones expected private payroll growth of 177,000. So, I mean, it's far above expectations there. Services provided jobs increased by 223,000 in April, led by a gain of 59,000 positions in professional and business services. Education and health services companies added 54,000, while employment within the leisure and hospitality industry expanded by 53,000. Goods producing jobs, which includes construction, manufacturing, and mining, rose by 52,000, led by a 49,000 payrolls increase in construction. The economy just added 5,000 manufacturing jobs, while mining employment declined by 2,000. So overall, medium-sized businesses, those that employ 50 to 499 people, led the way in jobs, creating last month by adding 145,000 jobs. I know it's a lot of numbers here, but when you think about it, these are big numbers. And jobs within small businesses, meanwhile, increased by 77,000, while large companies hired 53,000. So the job market is holding firm. This is the bottom line as businesses work hard to fill open positions. That's from Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics. He said in a statement, the economic soft patch at the start of the year is not materially impacting hiring. April's job gains overstate the economy's strength, but they make the case that expansion continues on. Of course, they got to give that little negative slant on it, but you know what? That's one thing that President Trump has not been given credit for. That, in fact, here it says in Wednesday's report, came after the Commerce Department said last week the economy grew by 3.2% in the first quarter on an annualized basis. That was the best start to a year since 2015. The official jobs report for April from the government will be released Friday. So very interesting. Just to keep in mind is that things are actually looking better. I just remember so many years where everything seemed to have been on a decline. And here we actually have some positive news. Things that we need to consider that we as believers in the Messianic community and the Hebrew roots is to understand that it's not a time to hit the bunkers. It's not a time that we should be saying, hey, look, we're just waiting for the greater exit. We're not here, Exodus. We're not simply looking at a strategy of how to escape. We need to look at a strategy on how we can impact culture and be part of culture so that we can have an influence within the culture. And if we're just simply saying, oh, it's the sky is falling, we may be missing out on what the Father's trying to show us. Just some thoughts there.
Thanks, John. Earlier, I said we should keep a watch on the end times. Are we there? The signs are there. John is going to tell us that Satan worship is on the rise in pop culture. What a shock. I'm just not sure this is new news, if you know what I mean. Here's John with the story.
All right, then. Well, thank you, Darryl. Yes, here on the Religion News. And you say, well, you're going to say, how did this get in Religion News? Well, stay tuned on this article. It says, we're in the end times. Why Satan worship is on the rise in pop culture. This was taken from charismanews.com and an article by Jenny Rose Curtis. It says here that the chilling adventures of Sabrina came out on Netflix in April. Well, do you know anything about this show? I certainly didn't, but reading the article, I'm kind of chilled by this one, and chilled in a negative kind of way. Netflix's new season of Chilling Adventures of Sabrina just came out, and kids are raving over it. Uh-oh. What are the chilling adventures of Sabrina? I mean, after all, chilling adventures. Well, it's starting a negative connotation to me right there. It says, but Tina Griffin, also known as the counterculture mom, says this new live action show takes witchcraft to a whole new level. We're not talking about a 1 or 2 minute scene in a short program. She says the entire theme of the program is about seances, black cats, magic, Wicca. We've got Sabrina's sweet 16 party with the devil, Satan, showing up at her birthday party. But it's not just chilling Sabrina that's glorifying witchcraft and glamorizing the devil. Griffin says Satan worship has infiltrated pop culture through music and social media too. I said, well, yeah, I mean, this isn't anything new. Well, let's look at this a little bit more. She shares example after example of top celebrities who adhere to Satanism, wear occult clothing, or brand themselves with satanic symbols. But why are we seeing this sudden spike in Satan worship? It's because Satan has little time left, she says. I honestly believe we are living in the end times. We really strongly feel Christ, or Messiah, is around the corner. So this is the article from Charisma News. Now here's some thoughts here, is that after, I remember going all the way back to the late 70s, I picked up a book. And what was that book? Well, it was The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey. Do y'all remember that one? Of course, it's rapture related and has a lot of themes in there that I don't think are necessarily biblically accurate. But on the other hand, one of the chapters in there talked about in these last days, we would see a rise of Satanism. Well, that's one of the things that kind of piqued my interest. And that was before I was a believer. And that over the last 30, 40 years, I have been simply watching and waiting and paying attention to the shifts in our culture. And one of the things is, there's certainly been a rise in Satanism. And the fact that Netflix is taking this as a flagship show for our children, our young people, our youth, and the youth love it, is very disconcerting to me. Knowing that it is a time and a sign of the season that we're living in. But the fact of the matter is we need to make sure that we are aware of what our children are watching and what they're talking about. If they're going to a government school, this is part of the pop culture. This is what they're watching. And guess what? If you got Netflix, and your kids know the password, they can pull up the Netflix on their smartphones. They can watch these things when you're not even around. So parents, you need to be aware of what your kids are watching. You need to be aware of what your kids' friends are watching as well. There's something about the young people of today, and I won't say just the young people, but there's a hunger for the supernatural because there's a God-shaped vacuum that's inside every individual. And unless that's filled by the Holy Spirit, by the Ruach HaKodesh, it will be filled with something, and they're longing for something that is more powerful than them, that is outside of this natural realm. So it's very important, by the way, that we make sure that we introduce our children from the very beginning of what it means to serve a miracle working God who operates to supernaturally move and intervene within our circumstances. If you're not praying, you're not seeing the supernatural. And journal it so that you always have a memory of what Yah is doing within your lives. Just some thoughts about some of these things, because a lot of people say, well, God just doesn't work like he used to in the first century. I'm going to say bogus on that.
Thanks, John. Here's a new category to look at. In science news, a company called Fast Company accidentally admits that plants thrive on carbon dioxide. Biology 101. The greenhouse gas that liberals claim will destroy the world. But now they're saying it actually makes the world more green because, well, fancy that, it makes plants grow. Here's John Craig.
All right. Well, thank you, Darryl. Yep. This is, and I put this in our health news section related to science news, but it's all about how we're living on this earth. Yep. Here's the article. Fast Company. Fast Company. That's the name of a company. Accidentally admits that plants thrive on carbon dioxide. Uh-oh. The greenhouse gas that liberals claim will destroy the world, but actually makes the world more green. Well, it's very interesting. Actually, have that taught to us back when I was in grade school and high school back in the 70s, and I always understood that carbon dioxide is what plants needed, and it was carbon monoxide that was kind of dangerous, that's being emitted from our vehicles, but nevertheless, it's been this whole thing about carbon dioxide since from what I remember, since the 90s. Uh-oh. So, well, here's just something from naturalnews.com. So here's the article. It talks about even that the mainstream media cannot deny scientific reality forever. Carbon dioxide, or CO2, is essential for plant life. It's just a fact. It's a key component of photosynthesis, the chemical process which plants depend on to stay alive. While it may not be well known that the higher levels of CO2 are a key contributor to the massive global regreening that has been observed in the last 30 years. Yes, even NASA admits that CO2 is responsible for increasing plant life around the world by a staggering 50%. And yet climate change alarmists continue to deny this verifiable fact and these verifiable facts about carbon dioxide. In a recent article, Fast Company reported on a new probiotic designed to restore depleted soil. The probiotics, scientists say, will help soil store more carbon, which they aptly note is essential for plant growth. Essentially, the probiotics make plants healthier and better able to absorb CO2 from the atmosphere, which accelerates plant growth and crop yields while also helping to sequester more carbon in the soil. Soil used to hold more carbon and was home to a diverse population of microorganisms, much like the human digestive tract. These good bugs are essentially for healthy soil and healthy plants. But the rise of agrochemicals like pesticides, herbicides, and chemical fertilizers have left agricultural soils depleted and lifeless. The media has just admitted two things. Carbon and carbon dioxide are an essential part of our environment, and agrochemicals are the real threat to humanity, not CO2. You know, if you've got a young person in your household and they're being educated about all of this stuff about greenhouse effects and climate change and global warming and all that, they need to tune into this, at least get them to see this segment so that they can understand what's really happening, what the real facts are. Let's go on. Multiple studies have confirmed that increases in CO2 levels have contributed to a worldwide regreening effect that has left many climate change enthusiasts absolutely gobsmacked. Well, that's a new word for me, but it sounds like, yeah, slapped them in the face. For example, research published by the journal Nature in 2018 found that global tree cover has actually expanded by 7% since the 1980s. And then another study published by the same journal concludes that the CO2 fertilization is a primary driver for global greening. In fact, CO2 is responsible for an astonishing, wait for it, 70% of plant life increases worldwide. And yet, the left continues to assert that CO2 is destroying the planet, and not the pesticides, herbicides, and other toxic chemicals we're spraying all over it. And what do you think sounds more plausible? A gas that's naturally produced or consumed by just about every life form on the planet suddenly reaches toxic levels and kills everything? Or a laundry list of man-made toxins that wreak havoc on the environment thanks to arrogant humans? So climate change alarmists are a funny bunch. According to this article, there are plenty of environmental hazards that are actually real. Agrochemical runoff is destroying marine life. The bees are dying and chemical pesticides are poisoning people. These things are happening right now. But what do they hone in on? Carbon dioxide, the alleged threat of the future. In 2017, a shocking report revealed that the surface temperature recordings had been manually adjusted to fake record-setting warmth. Yep, that's true. Because why? Because it's always tied to money. What is the narrative? They want to push the narrative about carbon dioxide. And if you don't stick to the narrative, you don't get funding in your university studies. So what do? Hey, just fake it. Data indicating that sea levels were rising have also been found guilty of human intervention. Looks like many mainstream scientists are so glued to the global warming agenda, they do anything to keep pushing the big lie. There are too many instances of fraud within the climate science community to even count. I mean, after all, Al Gore, I think we're way past time that we would have lost the shores of the United States and shores around the nation, around the world even, because of this massive melting of the ice caps. Hasn't happened, has it? Because your science is faulty. And by the way, AOC, Alexandria Cortez, just wanted to let you know that your Green Deal and the world coming to end in 12 years, well, it may come to an end in the way that we know it, but it's not going to be because of this climate change hoax. It might be because it's the time of the return of Messiah. Just some thoughts there. Thought you might find this an interesting development happening out there. And thank you, Natural News, for this great report.
Thanks, John. We all know the world is at war, and on past episodes of Four Corners News, John Craig has kept us abreast of world war news, concerning Venezuela. Now we find that Venezuela has actually gone hot. And there are maps that may show World War III battle lines are being drawn. I would say that this is something to keep abreast of. Here's John with the story.
Okay, well, thank you, Darryl. Yes, World at War News. This article comes from the allnewspipeline.com. And the title of this is As Venezuela Goes Hot, does this map show World War III battle lines? Russia and China invade American dreams and visions of catastrophe. Well, a lot of things happening, and it's happening in our hemisphere. And it could be the very trigger point for World War III. We're watching it and paying attention. And I mentioned a map. Well, in the article, it gives a map, and it shows that this Maduro versus Guaido struggle down there in Venezuela, and the nations in the world that are supporting Guaido, who is the opposition leader, and the nations in the world that are supporting Nicolas Maduro. And as opposed to those that are calling for dialogues. And included in those that are supporting Maduro are Russia, Turkey, Iran, China, Mexico, Bolivia, Uruguay, and Nicaragua, and Cuba, by the way. And some of these other countries supporting Guaido is Canada, the United States, Brazil, multiple other South American countries. Nobody over there apparently in Europe or in Asia, but let's go on and see what this article has to say. And that it's talking about this, with Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido urging the Venezuelan people to rise up and overthrow President Nicolas Maduro, while urging the Venezuelan military to defect from Maduro's rule and turn against him. What's happening in deeply divided Venezuela could be seen as a very clear warning to America on several different fronts, with Americans also totally divided at a time when Venezuela going hot could very well have global implications, with Russia and China backing Maduro while the U.S. backs Guaido. Let's take a look at the unfolding Venezuela's presidential crisis. According to Wikipedia, a crisis concerning who is the legitimate president of Venezuela has been underway since the 10th of January 2019, when the opposition majority National Assembly declared that incumbent Nicolas Maduro's 2018 re-election was invalid, and the body declared its president, Juan Guaido, to be acting president of the nation. While some might argue that Venezuela's dictator, Nicolas Maduro, probably should have been overthrown in a revolution long ago for his treatment of the Venezuelan people, what the National Assembly did to, quote, install, unquote, Juan Guaido into the presidency, there was similar to what Democrats in the, quote, deep state, unquote, attempted to do to President Trump here. As a Wikipedia entry for the 2018 Venezuelan election reports, Maduro had won nearly 68% of the presidential vote, and Guaido wasn't even in the election. So while, and this report says, while we'll never support Maduro and truly believe he's been horrible for Venezuela, imagine if that deep state coup of President Trump and eventually Mike Pence had been successful, and the installed one President Nancy Pelosi. I mean, that's essentially what's happening there in the struggle in Venezuela. Steve Quayle warns us, Venezuela is really about the control of Venezuela's oil, and with both Russia and China now there, effectively encircling and containing the U.S. and pushing us closer toward the globalist end game, the destruction of the U.S. With Venezuela, well, let's go on here about Venezuela regarding John Bolton. He's now saying all options are on the table. He said that, I believe, last month in Venezuela, while Republican representatives speak of Venezuela being Syria on America's front doorstep. We remind those itching for war in Venezuela that mutually assured destruction is no longer mutual. And Russia could now kill every one of us that's here in the United States within 30 minutes and leave most of America a smoldering nuclear wasteland under 1,000+ feet of water for the next 1,000 years if the U.S. government insanely makes the wrong decision on Venezuela. One could even say that the map in this story shows the World War III battle lines. It reminds me of a dream that I had back in the late 90s, where I looked up in the sky. I saw a intercontinental ballistic missile being launched, and I ran back into the house. I told my wife to load up the car and the animals and our son and get down to Paladura Canyon, find a place of protection. We have 25 minutes. Well, I had no idea that Russia would be able to have such hypersonic missiles that could reach the U.S. within 30 minutes. Isn't that something? Well, going on in this article here, it says, and while we wish the Venezuelan people luck in their taking down of a dictator who has been horrible for their nation, one of the things we need to look at is to see who's backing Maduro's regime. That is Russia, China, and Iran, among other nations or other countries, to see that should this very bad situation get any worse, global military powers may soon oppose each other. Interestingly, the United Nations is also backing Maduro's regime in Venezuela. Newsweek has reported that both China and Russia have blasted any plans to overthrow Nicolas Maduro. And while the U.S.'s top diplomat warned there will be consequences for foreign backers of Maduro, should the very worst case scenario unfold in what many believe is a battle over Venezuela's oil, remember, don't touch the oil and the wine, it could quite literally be the trigger for World War III. And this was reported from the All News Pipeline back in January 27th. And with Venezuela clearly the world's newest powder keg. Yet, should this revolution against Nicolas Maduro fail, can you imagine what's going to happen to Venezuelan people who Maduro can think to this effort to remove him from his presidency? I mean, what would happen to anybody that's opposing him? This article actually says that Maduro and his government have cut off any, and this is what they've done, they have cut off any international news outlet showing footage of the protests, including U.S. outlets, Brazilian outlets, Colombian outlets, and Argentina news outlets. Surely the moves of a government trying to consolidate control and prevent independent news views from getting out to the public. Well, how does that relate to us? Well, this brings out a really good point. Yet, isn't that what we've been witnessing here in America from big tech and the Democrats? And remember that prior to the 2016 elections, Hillary Clinton's deputy communications director, Christina Reynolds, said that websites such as Breitbart and InfoWars have no right to exist and should be banned. Now, that's almost exactly what totalitarian governments attempt to do, and clearly what Maduro and Venezuela are doing now, shutting down alternative messages and news. And if carried out to their completion, such pogroms have often through history led to full-scale mass executions. This article goes on and talks about which you can look it up there for yourself. It talks about different prophecies concerning the United States and different warnings about the United States from Dmitry Duduman and Henry Groover. Going on here, it also mentions that Maduro and his military forces have callously mowed down a number of Venezuelan people in the streets. And there's actually some pictures. I watched it. It was pretty brutal, pretty graphic. Shows that the extreme brutality that comes along with any attempt to oppose or depose government. It also is not simply a coincidence that the Venezuelan people were disarmed long ago. And with what's happening now in Venezuela is something that President Trump admitted via a tweet that he's keeping a close eye upon, while Russia and China have collectively warned of consequences for overthrowing Nicolas Maduro. So Venezuela's the global game changer in the days, weeks ahead. Should U.S. troops become involved there, I think that's something we need to be very concerned about and keep our eyes open to. With Russia now holding the holy grail of nuclear superiority over the United States, with escalation dominance, what's happening in Venezuela could quickly spin totally out of control should our leaders insanely think that. So, as it concludes here, and I'm in agreement, says, so we pray that cooler heads emerge in Venezuela and somehow the people of Venezuela get the relief that they absolutely need while looking at Venezuela as a warning to America on several fronts, with mass division in the U.S. quite possibly leading to civil war as well, with Venezuela also offering us more proof that socialism fails the people and only leads to death and destruction. We hope that Democrats, yes, I'm talking about the Democrats who are calling for socialism in America, are paying close attention as well. Yeah, got to keep an eye on Venezuela because it is a powder keg and it is something that the whole world is connected to. Again, don't touch the oil and the wine. We wonder why that prophetic warning is given to us in the book of Revelation. But when we see the oil that's in Syria, over there in Israel, when we see what's going on in the Middle East, we see it and it ties over here to Venezuela, and even the oil that's in Russia and how they're building those pipelines across Europe to feed Europe. And President Trump has warned Europe not to take Russian oil. Why? Because the U.S. wants to sell our oil to Europe. Isn't it interesting how all of these things tie to this one thing and this whole industry by which the world's economy is built on? Oil. Well, we're going to keep an eye on these things. Hope you have been informed with this information. And back to you, Darryl.
These are indeed perilous times that we live in. We regret to say that there will be no Israel update this week, and we are sure that the O'Hares will be back next week, though, with one of their dynamic Israel news reports. A lot of our reports blur the lines between the US and Canada, not surprising since we share the longest undefended border in the world along the 49th parallel. For the past report in this episode of Four Corners News, our very own Susan Hooge is going to tell us, put our hard-earned take-home payback money in your wallet instead of giving it to the stores with the Flipp app. Need money for Sukkot, Shavuot, or other essentials? This report will help you learn more about this easy-to-set-up and use app. Is Susan working for this company? Shouldn't this be an advertisement instead of a news report? For a blurred headline report of US and Canadian news, here's Vancouver's own Susan Hooge.
Darryl, for the media report segment this week, I'm going to highlight an app that can help a lot of people save money. For many people, the money spent on groceries is a good-sized portion of the budget. With the costs of living steadily increasing each year, while at the same time a person's income is not keeping up, it requires a greater level of creativity to stretch the take-home pay. If you have a smartphone, there is an app that can help you save money in a big way. It's called Flipp, Flipp. So what is it and how does it work? The purpose of the Flipp app is to consolidate all the flyers of your area into one app right on your phone. It provides you, the consumer, with the product sales information you want and need to know. At present, the physical paper flyers are delivered to homes with the local newspapers. Consumers leaf through the pages hoping to find the items they are shopping for, and they're hoping that they'll be on sale. If they are, that is great. Now the consumer knows which store has the item on sale and can go shop there. But what if the consumer wants more than one item, such as you get with groceries? Not everything is not everything that a consumer needs would be on sale at one store. For many people, this means shopping at more than one store in order to get the sale price. If store hopping is not an option, it means not getting the sale price on all the items. That becomes a monetary burden on the consumer's wallet, causing the consumer to reduce their overall spending. Some of the larger stores understand this, so they brought in a policy of price matching by saying, we accept all competitor flyers. From a business perspective, this brings in more customers. And from a consumer perspective, this becomes a savings incentive. But it requires consumers to bring in the paper flyers to show the cashier the sale price. This is cumbersome and slows down the lines at the tills as people search through the flyers. So, to streamline this process and be consumer friendly, Flipp was created. If there are stores in your area that offer price matching, such as you can get with Walmart, the Flipp app will really become a helpful tool for you. Let's take a look at how Flipp can help. When you first use the Flipp app, it will ask you to select the local flyers that matter to you. Many times, consumers are not aware of what some stores are offering in their weekly paper flyers, simply because they're not getting the flyers. With Flipp, having all the flyers at your fingertips is a very helpful option. Once all the flyers you want are selected, you will notice that the digital flyers look exactly the same as the paper flyers. At the bottom of the app are 4 tools to make your flyer scanning easy and quick. There is the Browse tool, which lists all the flyers. There is the Deals tool, which lists sales of items you may be interested in. And this is triggered by a previous internet searching that you might have done while doing things like searching on Amazon, etc. There is the Search tool as well, which allows you to target the specific item you are looking for. And then there is the List tool, which allows you to make a shopping list of the items you tend to purchase on a regular basis, such as you do with groceries. The List tool offers the consumer a level of flexibility that has not been previously available. Each item you add to the List tool has a link to the flyers specific for the added item. For example, if you added apples to the shopping list tool, there will be an arrow next to the word apples, which you can click. The Flipp app then brings up all the flyers that have apples on sale that week. You choose the best priced flyer and clip the product by touching it on the screen. This shows up as a yellow circle. Now, when you go to the grocery store that does price matching, you can show the cashier Flipp app flyer with the yellow circled item, and you will get that sale price. Now, you don't have to go store hopping anymore, which can be a pricey matter with the cost of gas these days. Download the Flipp app and begin to save your hard-earned money. I personally have been using the Flipp app for nearly a year and want to share with all of you the financial benefits of this powerful little app, which is available on Android and iPhone phones. Get started and get saving. The savings you experience can be that significant and can help you have the money you need to attend Sukkot or for any other reason that you may need that money. With this media report, I'm Susan Hooge, Four Corners Weekly News.
Thanks, Susan. Always good to find ways to save a little bit more of our hard-earned money. And thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the Messianic Lamb Network YouTube channel for all information about shows, broadcasts, show hosts, producers, schedules, what's coming up, and anything and everything you wanted to know about the Lamb Video Network. Go to MessianicLambRadio.com. You are now actually able to watch all of our live shows on the website while they're on air. There is no chat feature, only live broadcast as it is live on air. And we know that there are many of you who don't participate in the chat and who don't really want to watch the chat during the broadcast. So this is for you. While you're on the website, be sure to check out all of our other awesome live and recorded broadcasts. Donate as you are able. Sign up for the bi-monthly email updates. I'm Rabbi Darryl Weinberg. You've been watching Four Corners Weekly News on the Lamb Video Network. God bless. Shalom.